Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on Culture A. Today, I'm really pleased to let you know that I have Feras Zeidan with me. Feras, thank you for joining.
Thank you.
So let me give you background on Feras, okay? You are a professional in learning and development and talent management. He's not just a professional. He has 25 years of experience, okay, to be exact, global experience, and has worked across a variety of sectors, educational technology, right? ICT, telecoms, retail, hospitality, the list goes on and on. His expertise is in leading diverse and cross-cultural teams, and he very well knows how to leverage data and analytics for talent development, which sets him apart in the industry. He's also a CIPD Certified Trainer and a non-executive board advisor of an organization called the Knowledge Collective, which we'll get into a little bit later. He brings with him an enormous amount of knowledge, okay? And this is why I have him on the podcast with me today. I would love to hear more about your unique perspective on people development. And I know that you're also a very sought-after speaker and consultant. So I'm really, really, really lucky to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Okay, let's jump into the discussion. So it's the first time that you and I are connecting. Usually I'll have a little bit of a chat with someone before they come on the show, but there was something about your profile where I decided to change my approach. Honestly, the way I reached out to you, the way I communicated with you was very different from how I usually do it, and I don't know why. I think it's because deep down I felt we would have a really nice, flowy, smooth conversation, and I think that's the case. So I apologize for my approach. And thank you.
No, it was perfect.
Thank you. Okay, let's give the listeners of Culture A some background. Okay, can you tell them a bit about, how your career evolved over time and what led you to where you are today?
All right. So I've had a really colorful career. Let's put it this way. Started up right out of high school. And my first job had elements of training in it. So started up as a waiter in hospitality. I was, deciding what do I want to do in university. So started up there. Worked for a small company called TGI Fridays.
Just a tiny company?
Just a tiny one. So, and they had something called in-store training, where you get certified as an in-store trainer, and that hooked me. So
that was it.
That was it.
Okay.
I was like, that's what I want to do. So back then that was 97. There was not much, in terms of training happening otherwise in various organizations. I would say that it was all, you'd go to books. We didn't have e-learning. But it was extremely exciting. The thing that drew me there was the impact that I saw that training had on people and their skills and their development and their growth. And I said, that's what I want to do. So that's my start. But then, I kept on working on myself in terms of development, worked in L&D and HR consulting. In various industries, supporting various industries. And then my journey brought me to Dubai. And, that's where things got more and more interesting because, it's extremely multicultural as well. The challenges are not the same challenges that you would face.
Right.
When you're working in I would say in a place where it's more monocultural. Over here, it's extremely multicultural, rich. People's backgrounds are so different, and as well, it gives you a lot of different learnings.
I was just about to say, it must give you a lot of learnings.
Yeah, exactly. So that was, that as well hooked me more and more. And my start in Dubai was in consulting.
How long ago was that?
That was in 2004.
Okay. Oh, so you've been here a while. Yeah. Okay.
So I was here, then I left to Europe, then I came back.
Okay.
Worked for a company that consulted for let's say government entities, semi-government entities, and as well a lot of different companies in the private sector. So that was exciting. Then afterwards worked for companies in retail, again in hospitality, in telecommunications, in ICT, in medtech, in edtech.
Yeah. I love that you haven't been in one industry. You know, a lot of people make their career in one, or like, you know, in a type of sector, let's say. But I love that you've kind of moved around a little bit from one to another. I think that also gives you like a fresh perspective on, you know, how is it done here? What can be improved here? What can be, you know, mirrored there, kind of thing. So thank you for giving our listeners some background. It's nice to hear about your journey. So look, your experience has been, as you said, in global organizations. You've kind of had your imprint or your fingerprint on a lot of these companies. I'm interested to know about the challenges, because this is what we discuss on the podcast,
definitely.
Right? we talk about the good and the bad. What would you say, or let's pick one if you can. Can you think of one really big challenge that, you know, kind of set you back, and you had to figure out how to solve it, and how did you approach it, and, you know, were you able to kind of get over it? What was the hurdle that you had to?
I think the biggest challenge that I faced was decision making in different industries, and in different cultures. So that was something that always intrigued me.
Okay.
And as well, the biggest challenge that I faced was in certain industries and in certain areas, decision making is so slow, while in other industries, other areas, it's extremely fast.
It's extremely fast. That's true.
Yeah. So I would say that would be like number one. There's another one, which is you don't always get what you want in terms of talent. So the biggest challenge in certain industries is the size of the talent pool globally. That's another challenge that I've seen across the different geographies that I've worked in.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to number one, and then I'll come back to your second example. Fast or more extensive, let's say, decision making, a lengthy decision making, when you are working somewhere where the decision making just drags. Okay, because I've faced it. How do you get that buy-in to move it quicker?
So you have to go one by one. You have to tackle it one by one. See where the issue is getting stuck.
Where's the roadblock?
Because sometimes it's just two people not talking, or in other areas it might be two people talking but not understanding each other. And that's where you would have to step in and and talk things through.
Yeah.
And sometimes the solution is extremely simple and easy. In other areas, the solution becomes harder because egos.
Yeah.
So and that's where you would have to spend a lot of time massaging egos.
Yeah.
Sadly it happens, but as well as HR professionals or as people professionals, we have to use our expertise to see where these roadblocks are, and to see how to challenge them and change them and overcome them.
I had a guest on the podcast, Rodrigo Gill, okay? And I didn't know him prior to filming with him. And in our discussion, became very evident that he was very data focused. He was very factual. And that resonates a lot with me, because this is how I think. I had a little bit of a challenge at work, and I wanted to build out a framework for something. And I anticipated that there may be some, not resistance, but there may be a roadblock, okay? Because I identified that decision-making was a bit slow. So I contacted Rod. And I was like, hi, do you remember me? I need your advice with this. And he actually told me something that was so simple that I hadn't thought of. And I don't know why I hadn't thought of it before, but it was really so simple and so helpful. He said, when you anticipate something like that, when you're building something out, never build it alone.
Yeah.
right? Don't build out your framework and present it. Don't come with your strategy and put it on the table. Build it in collaboration with the leaders of the organization, with the people that you're going to need their buy-in for. The minute they start to build with you, you have their automatic commitment.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it's so simple, isn't that so simple? But
people feel invested.
They feel invested,
Yeah.
and then once you have that commitment, okay, it might not speed up decision making because you always have resistance here and there, but I think it helps. It definitely helps.
Yeah.
To what is it called? I don't remember, but it's basically like collaborative building,
like
or something.
Co-creation.
You do
co-creation and co-development. Yeah.
Co-creation. Thank you. So your response just kind of took me there. Your second example, if you don't have the talent pool available.
Yeah.
Okay. You said globally, which is a big statement to make.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you do if the talent's not there? Do you have to build it from scratch?
You know, in talent development, you have choices. So you either buy it, you either develop it, or step by step, you acquire it. So if you're buying it, you're outsourcing it, right? You're getting someone outsourced. If you're building it, you have to build it internally, but then as well, it has to do with your talent acquisition strategy. If you're acquiring talent at the right rate, you're acquiring talent as well with the +1 in mind, that they're ready for the next move. So you have to be thinking ahead of the curve.
Yeah, you have to suss it out.
Exactly. And the other thing would have to do with your workforce planning strategies. So how early are you in identifying those those needs?
Yeah.
So if you identify them well ahead of time, you can build them. But if something comes up, if a request comes in, in talent acquisition, you got a lot of last minute requests.
That's true.
We need that yesterday.
It's always yesterday. Yeah.
Exactly. So and as well, so little time to do that. So that's when your options become extremely limited, and that's when you have to go and buy what you need in terms of talent.
Yeah.
But I'm a big proponent, with my background in talent development, I'm a big proponent of building your internal bench strength. And for you to do that, strategic thinking needs to be in place. And as well, you need to have a strong company strategy, a strong HR strategy, thinking way ahead of the curve, and looking at all your future needs, way ahead of time.
Firas, do you also get involved in leadership development?
Yeah.
At an executive level, you
Yeah.
do, because I mean, so many companies struggle with that seniority level, right? When you have individuals that are at the top, okay, who are doing a great job, it's very easy to forget that you need to build that next successor.
Definitely.
Yeah, and you, until you get to a point where you're stuck.
Definitely.
Right. And so a lot of companies struggle with it. And how do you do it? And I know that there are many organizations that you can call on, you can bring them in and they can do some coaching. But I'm interested to hear from you. How do you evaluate, what's needed?
I think that as well, your talent management strategy should be strong enough, from the start. Because if your talent management strategy is strong, proper succession planning is in place. And within succession planning, you would identify, that you would have enough bench strength for those specific critical roles that need to be in place. So I would say that for critical roles, you should have at least 2 or 3 successors in place that you would work with on their individual development, get them coached, and as well get them ready.
Ready in a
exactly.
year. Okay.
So that's extremely important, because as much as it's important as well to develop the person in place, to keep them engaged, to keep developing their strengths, and as well keep them up to date. Because things are changing extremely fast.
Yeah.
You would have to work as well on their successors, have them ready in time. Because as well, your succession plan is as good as your high potential development programs that you would put in place.
There's one other thing that I notice is very common within this region in terms of a challenge, and that's employees. Here, there isn't really a culture of be vocal about your development. So a lot of people struggle about just having a conversation with their manager or their, the line about where they want to go and where they see themselves in the organization. When you have that, when you have, let's say, a large pool of talent within an organization that is like that because of cultural norms, how do you encourage the organization then to push for that conversation, that narrative, that openness? How do you do that?
I think the best thing is to take a step back and look at the organizational culture first. And that's where learning and development and talent development have a big role to play. Because if employees aren't vocal about their development, I would assume that the company's learning culture doesn't offer it and is not is not in place. And that's what I would speak to learning and development professionals and say, your first step is always building a learning culture within your organization. And it's not only, learning and development department or professionals' role. It's as well company leadership. So whenever you have a C-suite that doesn't talk about people development, you're not going to see people saying that, yes, I want to develop. Because
there's no investment in
exactly. And the other thing as well, it's in terms of the priority. So if company leadership prioritizes people development, people will be vocal about developing because, that's what's hot and new in the organization. But if people are just glorifying other stuff within the organization, you would rarely see people talking about their own development.
It's true.
So it's a mirror. I say that it's a top-down. It's a top-down thing. It's if you want it to be bottom-up, L&D would have an extremely pivotal role in I would say marketing a learning culture internally.
That would be an uphill battle also, because it's one thing to assess the hunger, I think. Like I'll tell you, I had a conversation recently with an account director from LinkedIn. Okay, who I always like to talk to because I've used the platform for a million years. So I was talking to somebody from LinkedIn, and I asked the question. I want to assess the hunger to use the platform of the existing employee population. Can you tell me how many of our existing registered employees on LinkedIn are paying out of pocket for some sort of premium? The number was staggering. I was so shocked to hear how many people were there. I just thought, you know what? They're just there. The appetite's there. The appetite's totally there. And thankfully there is a top-down, so it's marrying in the middle kind of thing, but absolutely.
Definitely. And the other thing as well that we have to thank COVID for, which is people have gotten into the habit of development. Like online development specifically, because people frowned on online develelment before. E-learning was the public enemy number one. Now, thanks to COVID, everyone wants it.
Convenient.
Exactly. So it's on time, on-demand learning. I remember before COVID, in Ericsson, we were introducing on-demand learning, and it was like something extremely important, in building a learning culture as well, because learning is there for you whenever you need it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, if you were not offering some sort of accessible learning platform, and your employees are just waiting to receive that next training, you're stagnating. You're just you're creating a block.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the training programs that you've put in place, okay? Because obviously you've done this for so long. You have seen the shift. Everyone has seen the shift of like this digitization, this automation, whole AI world that we're living in right now. How do you balance between the traditional methods of creating like a training or learning program or individual programs to bringing in more of that digital, accessible, personalized
Yeah.
approach.
So, and thanks a lot for saying personalized, because it's extremely important. Learning needs to be personalized. There's no one size fits all, especially in learning and development. Because early on, like from the early on days of L&D, it's always been about, different learner preferences.
Yeah.
So you would have to tailor make your learning based on that. But now it's much deeper. It's down to the person and their preferences. So the programs that I've built, and I'm talking about programs, as early as 2013, 2014.
Okay.
These programs have always had the hybrid approach. So it was never only a face-to-face
Okay.
interaction.
Okay.
I'm a strong believer in learning as a journey and not as a program. Because if we look at learning as an event,
it's done and
exactly.
It's over. Yeah.
So ATD had something in the past called, coffee and donut events. Like people would go there for the coffee and donuts. But whenever people are invested in learning, it becomes a journey. And the programs that I was involved in building had always the classroom factor, the coaching aspect, and as well they've had the self-driven aspect. Because self-driven learning, if you're driven enough to go ahead and acquire the learnings that you need, there's nothing that can stop you.
Yeah, that's true.
Because curiosity is there. You're always going to go down a rabbit hole, because that's what learning is. And I feel that when you're building a program, it's extremely important to think about the various aspects that would bring the program together. So, for instance, if I give an example about one leadership development programs that I was involved in building, it was a year-long program. It was for high potentials. It had 4 face-to-face encounters throughout the year. It had cohort peer learning as well. So people were put in cohorts and were encouraged to have either face-to-face meetups, but because of the global nature of the organization, it was all link.
Okay.
Like link calls or Teams calls. And as well, there was another aspect, which was coaching. And at a later stage, we worked with a company called CEB back then on a program which was a virtual coaching program where people would do an assessment. Based on that assessment, they would get a virtual coach that would coach them through their development areas. That
is super interesting.
Yeah,
I can't believe it was a year long. Maybe it's my understanding of this domain. I am not used to seeing year-long programs because there's so many elements, as you said, so many elements that become part of it. So it really gives them, the individuals who are taking part, a comprehensive understanding. Like it's not just someone telling them something.
Yeah.
They're digesting it. They're actually understanding it, and they're putting it into practice.
Of course.
It's over such an extended duration that it remains part of their. It like ingrains in them, right? It remains part of their person.
Definitely, it becomes part of your psyche.
That's it.
Because the thing is, and we don't only approach it from we're teaching you this because this is good for the organization.
This is for you.
People have to be invested. And for me to be invested as an individual, I need to ask myself, what's in it for me, right? So the first thing, and that's something that I learned in TGI Fridays back then. It was, part of my trainer certification. The most important question to answer from a learner's perspective is WIFM, which is what's in it for me. So you always need to show what's going to be in it for them. And what we saw as extremely important to include in these programs were about wellness and recovery. So it's not all about work. It's not all about the work that you put in. It's as well about, your how you're maintaining yourself. How do you recover? And how important recovery is. And that focus is extremely important. And that's something that I see missing in organizations in the Middle East. to be quite honest.
Yeah, and to be quite honest, as you were saying it, I just thought of myself, because I can only speak for myself, but maybe there's people listening who are like me. I think there's like a little bit of a stigma here, maybe, where it's like if you want to do well, it means you're dedicated, and that dedication comes with it doesn't come with a clock. So it's 24 hours a day that you are accessible, that you are switched on, that you are ready to answer anything. And I've always been like that. I don't think I've ever learned different. So for me, it's the norm. It doesn't interrupt my life. When you say, how do you maintain and take a break? And, I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Which is so bad. It's so bad. But I'm sure that it's very common here.
It is. And for me, it was a culture shock when I first moved to Finland. So out of all places, I moved to Finland. That was my first, my first move out of the Middle East to live somewhere. And in Finland, what I really respected about the culture is that work is between, like 8 and 4.
Clock in, clock out.
So it's not about clock in, clock out. It's more about, this is the time I'm dedicating for work.
Okay.
And the rest of the time is resting time for me. And that's optimum, that's nice. But sometimes it might have its blowbacks, because that means that, for instance, nothing happens in July.
Yeah.
Nothing happens.
It's like in France.
Exactly.
France is the same.
So nothing happens in July. But that's the way the whole country is built. So it allows for that. And as well, the understanding is this way. But over here, I think that it's extremely diverse, extremely multicultural, that it brings in challenges to implement something like that. Plus, technology has changed things a lot. Like if I compare, like working in 2009 versus working now. In 2009, 6 o'clock, you closed your laptop, you went home. Your email wasn't fully accessible, on your mobile phone.
Yeah.
Though your mobile phone was capable of doing that, but there was no company culture of checking your email on the go. You weren't reachable via Teams. So there was more work-life balance back then than it is now. The thing is, yes, work life is interconnected with personal life. There's no way around it, and it's great. It enriches, like your personal life enriches your work life enriches your personal life. That's totally fine. But then it's up to the individual in terms of how do they manage that workload? How do they distribute it in a way that it doesn't get in the way of their personal life?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, burning the candle on both ends usually ends up in us suffering, I would say. So the best thing about it is to learn how to manage yourself.
What I also kind of find, and this is, again, purely my perspective, but when you work for a global organization, a lot of the times you deal with individuals who are not familiar with the region, and that lack of awareness sometimes comes with a perception that it's an emerging market, so it's not as advanced, it's not as mature, which is the case. But that also means that sometimes there's a perception of we probably do it better than they do, and so you'll find individuals based in the Middle East that feel like you have to burn the candle at both ends, because you're constantly justifying, like you're justifying your role, or you're justifying the work you're doing, or you're trying to prove a point that, we are as strong, if not more, than anybody globally. And I think with that, this is where learning and development of an individual goes in, and it's like a fork, okay? It's one of two ways. Either they're so engulfed in work that they have stretch assignments, and they collaborate across cross-functionally, and they learn a lot about areas outside of their function or their role, and so it helps to push that learning curve. And then you have the others that are, so focused on delivering in the role, proving themselves, that they forget that they need to invest in themselves as well. And so you're left with one or the two, I feel.
And it has to do a lot with company culture first. And the second thing, it has to do with leadership. So a good leader knows as well how to manage their teams, I would say, output, and as well in setting expectations. So setting realistic expectations allows you to have time to breathe.
Yeah.
But if leadership is setting unrealistic expectations, it puts all the weight of delivery, on the team, which as well sometimes is not fair. So, and thinking from a global, local, and those, those frames, I would say most importantly is the pushback. It's extremely important if you see something that's unrealistic, that, just to push back, call it out, challenge it. And I'm talking from personal experience here. I've worked in global organizations as well. I've worked locally over here. And sometimes, we do it much better than our global counterparts. Because as well, the reality of our markets is a bit different, but as well, it has to do whether you're in a consumer, I would say, consumer-led market versus non-consumer-led market. If you're working B2B versus B2C. If you're working B2C, it's more diverse rather than if you're doing it B2B. But I think it's a leadership. It's a leadership conundrum there. Yeah. It's leadership driven, as you said.
Okay. This is a very broad question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Sorry. What do you think is the key to creating like a really engaging learning solution?
The key, I would say, is knowing your learners, knowing what drives them, knowing what what switches them on. Because if whatever you're developing, doesn't speak to that specific group of people, it's going to be a bit disconnected. And I'm a strong believer in gamification. We were talking about gamification before.
Yeah.
And I've had a recent example of that. So I was involved in a pre-opening for an airport duty-free in Zanzibar.
Okay.
And there was a diverse group of around 105 people that were getting developed. So we had 2.5 months to prepare them before opening. And
this is a short time frame.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're talking about people that doesn't have the background. Not all of them have. Some of them had the background. Not, most of them didn't have the background. But the nicest thing that we saw was that whenever we introduced gamification, people were switched on. And as well, the other thing is that it spoke to their competitiveness.
I like that.
So competitiveness drove learning, which was great. Plus, as well, technology helps a lot. So we were using a really helpful tool.
It's true, though, by the way, that you say that now. My own experience also makes me think. I looked at gamification for talent acquisition, and I took the time, as I told you, to go through the actual games to assess myself. I think the thing that got me was that I knew that there was a leaderboard.
Yeah, exactly.
And I have to get to the top of the leaderboard. Like, it's crazy, no?
Yeah.
That it sparks that immediately.
Exactly. And the thing is, it's just the fun aspect of it. It gives you bragging rights.
Yeah.
Like people were competing just to brag. And, so we started using that gamification online and offline. So as well, like even in introducing something as boring as policies.
Yeah.
We did bingo.
Really?
Yeah, and people were just competing.
I like that.
Yeah, so it was extremely nice to see. And it was like a living case.
That's such a creative way to approach it. I really like that idea. Bingo. Wow. Okay. What about yourself, Firas? Like, how do you invest in yourself?
I'm a constant learner. Like, I can't say that a month passes without me learning something new. And it doesn't all have to be certifications. It's just
4,000 certifications
exactly.
on the
So
wall, yeah.
I'm learning every day.
Okay.
I read every day. I think that it's extremely important to look at things with a fresh eye, with a fresh pair of eyes. For instance, I listen to a lot of podcasts, a lot of audiobooks. I used to read a lot of books. I don't have the patience now just to sit and just do that.
Yeah.
So an audiobook is playing when I'm driving or or just doing something else at home. But yeah, I keep on learning, and I'm always curious about new things. So for instance, if we look at technology, I'm always interested in technology. I'm always looking for new ways of doing things. And I think that, we're living in extremely exciting times.
Yeah.
Extremely exciting.
Yeah. I agree with you completely. I find myself doing things that I never used to think about doing. I mean, honestly, the start of the podcast. I mean, this is not something I would have thought of 10 years ago at all. But the reason that I started is because it's a great way for me to learn, right? I'm sitting with somebody, I'm learning about what they're doing. We're talking about challenges, solutions. And I take it home with me. Like, I really do. I take it home. I apply it at work. I find myself, now, the Dubai traffic is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Nightmare. Okay?
Definitely.
Yeah. So I find myself when I'm in the car going to pick up my kids from school and I'm stuck for an hour, I'm listening to things. I'm listening to audiobooks, as you said. I'm listening to other podcasts. And I never would have done that before. So the learning is there. It's accessible.
Yeah.
It's free. So why not just, and sometimes it's subconscious as well. Like something's playing in the background. You don't realize that you're absorbing it.
Definitely. Definitely. And, what we put in our minds is extremely important.
Yeah.
So as well, we have to filter what sort of information do we absorb versus what sort of information do we just...
The noise.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Last question. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I ask everybody the same one. So what would you say is your top piece of advice for someone that's just starting out in talent development? Okay, someone completely fresh. And then separate to that, the advice that you would give someone who's very seasoned in the field.
So someone starting up, I would say be extremely curious. Extremely curious. Don't let anything stop you. And don't let anything faze you. So don't be afraid to try new things, new ways. Make a lot of mistakes. Make them fast. Learn from them. Move on. Don't dwell over mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes.
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
We all make mistakes.
Yeah.
The most important thing is just don't dwell over them. And I would say just follow trends. Look at what are the latest trends. Read a lot. Look at different sources. So when I first started in my career, I was looking at what ASTD back then was publishing, what the CIPD was publishing. Went on various forums. Forums were big back then. Various forums. Got in touch with other L&D professionals and talent development professionals in the country, outside of the country. Organized or was part of organizing meetups where we learned from each other as professionals. So that was extremely impactful on my career and as well on my learning. So someone who's starting up now, it's the best time to start. Information is accessible.
Just go for it.
Yeah, for us before, we had to order a book on Amazon and wait a month for it to get here.
That's true.
So yeah, now there's a lot of information out there. For a seasoned professional, I would say, look at the market, look at your company's strategy, and as well spend more time with the leaders in your company. Because as well, learning or talent is not always top of mind with leaders. We need to lobby for that. Spending more time with leaders keeps it top of mind. So my best advice for someone who's seasoned is,
Get that visibility.
get that visibility, stay closer to your stakeholders, and as well, think ahead of the curve.
Perfect way to end it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Really, it was really nice to have you here. I appreciate it. For everybody that is listening in, you know what to do. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please share this episode. Feras actually gave a lot of valuable advice for people out there. So please share it. And if you have any questions for myself or for Feras, please reach out anytime. And if you have any subject ideas for the next one, please feel free to reach out. Thank you so much, everybody. Stay tuned.